Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede. Last week, the city of Key West voted to withdraw from what is commonly referred to as a 287G agreement with ICE. That agreement allows ICE to commandeer local police officers to participate in ICE raids in the city. Now, the city commission didn't realize that the Key West police chief had signed the agreement, and the police chief testified that he was afraid if he didn't sign it, Governor Ron DeSantis would remove him from office.
I was advised that the governor had laid out exactly how he could now remove a police chief from office if we did not enter into a 287G agreement. This obviously made this situation more urgent for me. I found the most up-to-date version of the 287G and brought it to legal for approval. I do not recall if legal had already heard the news that the governor could now remove a chief of police from office or if I informed him of the news. Nonetheless, it certainly emphasized the urgency to come into compliance.
Key West isn't the first city to challenge the state law. The mayor of South Miami, Javi Fernandez, also asked a judge to clarify whether the law passed by the legislature earlier this year requires every city and county sheriff to surrender their independence to ICE. Now, we're waiting on that ruling. In the meantime, let's be clear about something. Enforcing immigration law is a federal issue. When you force local police departments to become an extension of ICE, then undocumented immigrants will not call the police when they're the victims of crimes. So an undocumented woman, for instance, who is raped or assaulted or the victim of domestic violence will not call the police for help because she will be afraid she'll be turned over to ICE and deported. And that means her attacker, her rapist, may not be caught. And that makes our community less safe. Now, after the Key West City Commission withdrew from the agreement, saying they wanted to wait and see what a judge in the South Miami case decides, Florida Attorney General James Uthmeier wrote city commissioners threatening to remove them from office if they do not fall in line immediately. This week, I spoke to Key West City Commissioner Sam Kaufman.
I happen to be a lawyer, and I reviewed the Florida statutes under Chapter 908. I reviewed the pleadings in the pending litigation between the city of South Miami and the responses from the governor and the attorney general. I reviewed all the law, and I also reviewed the bills that died in the legislature earlier this year in the special session concerning immigration. Those bills would have required cities to participate in these 287G agreements. So my conclusion after reading everything was that the city of Key West was not required, and there is not a mandate. And that's the same position that the city of South Miami is taking at this time.
Do you feel like you're trying to be bullied, that the governor and the attorney general is attempting to bully Key West and other cities to simply comply?
I wouldn't go that far in using that sort of language. I would say that we have a different interpretation of the law. And what we should be doing is allowing the courts to have their say. We live in a country of laws. We have due process. We have a process to determine these questions. It's very clear that the city of Key West is not a sanctuary city. If you read the AG letter that was produced this week, it's clear in the letter that the city of Key West cooperates, assists, and supports in immigration enforcement. The AG cites to arrests that just this year have been made in cooperation with ICE and Homeland Security. So I think that there's a difference of opinion, a different interpretation of what constitutes a sanctuary city. And I am very confident that the city of Key West is not a sanctuary city. We have a wonderful police department, a wonderful chief of police, and they work diligently with all our federal and state partners in all sorts of ways, including in immigration enforcement. And there will be no evidence, there will be no single instance where anyone could say that the city of Key West does not assist and support in good faith in this effort and all other important areas of law enforcement.
But if you look at the Attorney General's letter, it is clearly a threatening letter that essentially he's threatening that unless you reverse this position, that the commission does not reverse its position, he will seek remedies, including removing all of you from office. Do you not read it that way?
I do. I am not disagreeing with you. I can tell you I received the letter and I have read it a few times and I take it very seriously. I still think that we can respectfully disagree about the substance of the law. And that's why we have courts. And that's why the Second Circuit Court is considering this very question. And I am hopeful that the courts will define for us what the law is and answer this question based on the merits and not based on political pressure.
Let me take a step back for a second. You talked about, speaking to folks in your community. I'm sure you've heard about this. What is your general impression? Again, I realize you speak only for yourself. You're not speaking on behalf of the city of Key West. But when you see ICE agents with their faces covered, going into businesses, rounding people up, arresting them, and we're not always talking about criminals here. Matter of fact, the majority of times, these are people who have committed no crime. What's your reaction to that, especially in a city like Key West that has such a, what's a good way to phrase it, libertarian point of view when it comes to live and let live?
Well, Key West is the greatest city in the world as far as I'm concerned, and all your viewers should come join us and let's do some fishing, go out past the reef and enjoy our beautiful environment here and the wonderful people of Key West. That's a certainty. Yes, look, we had 154 local businesses, 27 clergy, hundreds and hundreds of our local residents sign a community statement in support of the city's action on June 30th. And there's a reason for that. The negative economic result of this activity is real. We have our local construction contractors, landscapers, restaurant owners, you name it, retailers losing their employees because people that are reportedly with legal documentation, asylum seekers here with valid work authorizations are not showing up to work out of fear, and that's a major concern. I don't think this is a Republican or Democrat issue. I think this is a human issue. The human impacts are real. It's reported children are not going to school. Folks are not attending church out of fear. Church leaders are strapped because they don't have enough funding and food to do the home deliveries that they're needing to do. So it is heartbreaking from that perspective, but it's also a huge potential economic losses that we're talking about. So yes, these are great concerns, and it's not just a Key West issue. I think this is a national issue and there's certainly a state of Florida issue. We need to address it.
Don't you get the impression that the fear is the very purpose of this strategy?
Yes, but at the end of the day, we need people working in our nursing homes, in our hospitals, building our houses, working in the back kitchens. We need folks in our country to be the labor force. And also these are our neighbors and our friends, and we've developed relationships with these people. So to have people in such fear, it is heartbreaking. And I think that there has to be a more reasonable and moderate way to approach this so that there isn't such chaos.
Now, we'll keep an eye on what happens Tuesday, but my guess is city commissioners in Key West will cave, not because they believe it's the right thing to do, but because they are afraid. And fear is the greatest tool that any authoritarian leader has in getting people to do exactly what they want. Now, speaking of fear, when we come back, we look at the opening of Alligator Alcatraz. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now that Alligator Alcatraz is open, I spoke to Republican State Senator Joe Gruters, who was there this week with President Trump to tour the facility.
Well, listen, you got to give it to the president because just a couple of months in, he's accomplishing a lot of these goals that he set out. As a matter of fact, if you look at all the rallies that he spoke at, he always talked about closing the borders, deporting criminal illegal aliens. And that's what this event was all about. But the most important thing that the president needs is cooperation with state elected officials to help carry out some of these things. And of course, if you remember back earlier this year, we passed a bill in conjunction with coordinating with the White House and Stephen Miller and others, a bill that focused on beds, bad guys, and badges, the 3 Bs.
All right, so you sort of talked about the bad guys part of it, and the president's vow to deport violent criminals. Are you confident that the only people that are going to be held and detained there are violent criminals? Because the vast majority of people who have been detained so far are not violent criminals. They either have no criminal history whatsoever, or certainly nothing beyond sort of parking or traffic infractions.
Well,
So-
listen, anybody who's come across our borders illegally has already broken one of the laws. So let's get that clear right now. And the people that they're deporting have detainer requests already outstanding on them. That means, yes, they've been flagged, they have done some criminal activity somewhere throughout their life, or they've been previously deported, or they've missed their court date for when they were supposed to go in front of the immigration judges and they missed it. And so they automatically have a detainer order request. And let me tell you what a great job the governor in Florida is doing on this. In terms of the 287G program, which was part of that bill this year, I think we have 60% of the 287G contracts outstanding. And I think if you look at any specific day in Florida, we have 10 to 15% of the overall deportations you're seeing across this country.
But again, you didn't really answer the question. Are you confident that the only people that are going to be held at what you're now describing and what the president and everyone loves to describe as Alligator Alcatraz are going to be those violent criminals, not just people who are in the country illegally or have overstayed visas or suddenly had their TPS status revoked overnight by the president? And are they going to be rounded up, and are they going to be sent to this facility?
It's every criminal illegal that has a detainer request outstanding. So that can come from a lot of different ways to have that. Like I said, first, again, I'm going to say this right off the bat. Anybody that crosses without permission of the federal government is breaking the law. That's number one. Number two, you can get a detainer request numerous different ways. You've broken the law in some state. You could be beating your wife, rob a bank or whatever, and you've been let go from one of these sanctuary states. But also if you've been deported before for whatever reason, and or if you have had an immigration type proceeding and you've decided that you could just skip it, then usually a detainer request will go out on that person's behalf. And those are the people. Anybody that has a detainer request outstanding can be put into Alligator Alcatraz or one of the other numerous facilities that hopefully are going to be starting to build. But listen, the greatest thing about what the president's doing right now is he's giving all illegal immigrants the ability to self-deport, which includes a one-way ticket back to your home country and $1,000 bonus cash payment. So hopefully people will see everything that's happening. They'll self-reflect and say, we better get out of here before anything bad happens.
You mentioned earlier that this is a little used airport and little used runway. There's a reason why it's little used. It was because it was found that to use that facility, to build on that facility, to grow that facility would endanger Everglades restoration. And so while the airport was built, some 60, 70 years ago, it was never put forward because of the environmental impact. The governor claims that this is going to be a temporary facility. I'm curious, what does temporary mean? Do you anticipate that this will be lasting for 6 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years? How long is temporary in this?
Temporary until the job is done. So it could be a while, but it's a temporary structures. And the good thing is they don't have to go build any new buildings. They're using all the existing runways, all the existing poured concrete, and they're using tents, and they're using trailers, and everything that's being brought in can be brought right back out when they're done with this process.
Obviously, Florida has hurricane season. Your community was hit really hard just the last couple of years ago. What is the plan? Because I keep hearing the governor say there's going to be a plan, but I don't hear anyone actually document what is the plan for once you put people there, if there is a tropical storm or a hurricane warning, what is going to happen to those people? What are you going to do with them? What is the plan?
Well, if you could believe it, Jim, these tents could withstand a strong Category 2 hurricane. So they can deal with winds up to 120 miles an hour. They're already prepared. And this is where Florida really excels. You know, you have Kevin Guthrie, the Department of Florida Emergency Management. You know, he helped this process by bringing all these materials. This was almost like a setup job for one of these hurricanes that we do, with all these materials, bringing it in and setting up the staging area and everything else. So I have no worries whatsoever about a hurricane. Like I said, these are built to withstand a strong Category 2.
I just want to understand, they may be built to withstand a strong hurricane too. Are you saying, though, that is what Kevin Guthrie and others have told you, is that if there is a Category 1 hurricane, that they would not evacuate the facility? If there's a hurricane, Category 2 hurricane, they wouldn't evacuate the facility, that the idea is to ride out a Hurricane 1 or Hurricane 2 scope of hurricane at that facility out in the Everglades?
Listen, I know it could withstand a strong Category 2 hurricane. I don't know what the exact operational procedures will be if there's any type of hurricane warning. But I know the governor, I know the President of the United States, I know Homeland Secretary Kristi Noem. They will not let anybody get injured. Just like anywhere else, they'll make sure that everybody's protected. This is not supposed to be a punishment. This is merely part of the procedure to make sure that we take these criminal illegals from around Florida and elsewhere, make sure they go through the right processing and get them on their way.
When we come back, Governor Ron DeSantis signs the budget and whacks hundreds of millions of dollars in funding that would have helped local law enforcement, victims of human trafficking, homeless veterans, after-school programs, mental health programs, as well as the environment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Lost in the news this week was that Governor Ron DeSantis signed the state's $115 billion budget, but not before whacking about $600 million in line item vetoes. Now, I did a quick review of all the cuts, and some of them are just sad. He cut funding for half a dozen meal programs for seniors, like the Little Havana Activities and Nutritional Center and the North Miami Foundation for Senior Citizens. He cut transition housing for homeless veterans. He cut more than $600,000 to provide safe housing for victims of human trafficking. He cut tens of millions in environmental projects, including funding to monitor Biscayne Bay, improvements to the Sweetwater drainage system, and to provide clean drinking water to Opelika. He cut millions and millions of dollars from law enforcement as well, including funding to improve the Forensic Crime Lab in Broward and a police training facility on Miami Beach. He even vetoed funds to reimburse the Doral Police Department for overtime due to President Trump's visits to his country club. Now, I asked State Senator Berman about these cuts. She's the Democratic leader in the Florida Senate. But we began by discussing the notion you heard in the last segment, that Alligator Alcatraz could withstand a hurricane of Category 2 proportions.
I did read also that they said that it is up to a Category 2 and that if it was higher than a 2, they would evacuate. It does seem crazy to me that those facilities, which are actually the same facilities that are used after a hurricane, the trailers that are brought in when people's homes have been destroyed, could withstand a hurricane. And I really think that that is questionable. And if there is a hurricane heading in that area and it is only a Category 1 and they leave the people there, I think that it could be disastrous. I find the whole makeshift prison in the Everglades to be so horrific and distasteful that the state is doing this. These are human beings. I watched the pictures yesterday of the cages, and I saw the legislators who were there all smiling and taking pictures, and I feel like we've lost our humanity. I mean, these are, we've heard that President Trump was only going to round up criminals, but we've seen what's actually happening. He's going to construction sites. He's taking people at immigration court. We heard he's heading to Home Depot. So these are our friends, our neighbors, the people who are picking our crops, the people who are building our buildings, the people who are working in our hospitality industry. And I find the whole alliterative political stunt to be horrifying right now.
The governor recently signed the budget into law, but as part of it, he vetoed some $600 million worth of programs, including programs that benefit children, programs to help people, who are victims of human trafficking, programs for law enforcement. What was your reaction to the vetoes, the $600 million in vetoes that the governor instituted?
I'm very disappointed that the governor vetoed all these projects. There were 13 pages of member projects that were vetoed. And you have to understand that they totaled $600 million out of a budget that was over $115 billion. And that includes $15 billion in reserves. So these $600 million that were vetoed were a tiny portion of the budget, but so important for the cities and the counties and the social services agencies that put in for these requests. And they really, in these tough economic times where people are struggling here in the state of Florida to be able to afford to stay in their houses. I just read that people are taking out loans to be able to buy food, to feed their families. And in these times, those kinds of social service projects, those kinds of city projects, I think that they are more important than ever. And there was really no reason to veto all these items in the budget.
When you look at this budget overall, do you think this does much to sort of help on the issue of affordability here in Florida? There have been a lot of talk early on about reducing the sales tax. There was some talk about eliminating sales tax for certain items under $75. There was even talk from the governor of offering a $1,000 rebate to folks with homestead exemptions. None of that ended up passing. Does this budget help Floridians with the affordability crisis they're facing?
I think we have a lot of missed opportunities in this budget. I mean, we know one of the biggest crises in the state is property and auto insurance. We didn't do one thing in this budget to address property and auto insurance prices. We know there's a problem with housing affordability. There was one piece of legislation passed, but it's a piece, the Live Local Act, which was passed several years ago, which we've tried to modify and make it better, but I'm not even sure it's really having any impact. Like I said, people can't afford to buy their food at this point in the state of Florida. So I don't think we've done enough. We put in several sales tax holidays, but we've always had those sales tax holidays. It's nothing new. We've always had back to school. We've had some new recreation sales tax holidays. So I'm disappointed that we didn't do more to help everyday Floridians in our budget.
Well, that's all the time we have today. If you have any thoughts or comments, feel free to contact me at jdefede@cbs.com. I do enjoy hearing from you. Thanks again for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.